everyone, I'm Anastasia. I welcome you all to this new session of Fundamental of Nursing. So here in today's session, we are going to deal with a very interesting topic that you, being a nurse, may face during your profession. And this topic for today is the medico-legal cases. So what do you mean by medico-legal case? So medico-legal case is a case of an injury or an ailment in which investigations by the law enforcing agency is essential in order to fix the responsibility regarding the causation of the injury or the ailment. So here in simple language, we can say that this is a medical case with legal implications for the attending doctor. Here, after the doctor has performed the history collection as well as the physical examination, if he thinks, that some investigation is needed by the law enforcing agency, then this case is known as a medico-legal case. So now moving on to the documentation of an MLC. So being a nurse, what are the essential things you should know while you are documenting this case? The first one here is that while you are documenting any MLC case, you should document it according to the hospital policy, and you should also make sure that it must be written in a very clear and illegible handwriting. Any overwriting must be avoided, and if any corrections has been made, this should be properly initiated, and cutting also must be avoided. So using of abbreviations of any sort must also be avoided. Separate performer must also be available for any medical examination or examination of drunkenness, etc. And as a nurse, you must make sure that all the columns must be filled up carefully. You must also make sure that these columns must only be filled by the doctor who had examined the patient. So being a nurse, you should make sure that whenever you encounter any MLC case, you must finish, collecting all the history and documenting it there and then. You should make sure that you do not leave any provision that has to be completed later on. Why? Because if we don't document all the necessary things or all the, information which we have collected from the family members or from the patient, then if we leave it for later on, we might even forget. Each MLC is given a fresh MLC number sequentially. So while documenting, you should also keep this in mind. You must also make sure that you document each and everything which is happening, or which you are providing for the patient. Any investigations which was advised to perform, or any report findings, you must make sure that you must document it. Also, whatever treatment has been given to the patient. Being a nurse, you must also make sure that you document each and every information about the patient. You must document what are the investigations that has been advised to perform, or what are the findings that you have received for the particular patient, as well as whatever treatment that has been given. All these should be documented. All the opinions of the doctors or the other healthcare professionals must also be documented. And you must also make sure that any opinion which is given by the doctor or the other healthcare professionals must also be documented. And in case, if you encounter a patient for whom any opinion cannot be given by the physician, then you must make sure that you must also document this and get it signed by that particular doctor along with their name written in block letters. The final opinion can also be given by the same, doctor in the original MLC sheet after all the investigations are being completed. So here, after, all the opinions was being given, all the medications, all the treatment has been given to the patient before discharging the patient, the final opinion by the doctor is very necessary to be documented in the original MLC sheet after all the investigations are completed. So after the completion, the doctor must sign in the MLC sheet with his name written in full and block letters, as well as his designation. So before we discharge this patient, we should make sure that the police constable should be informed about this. We should also make sure that, all the documents which is related to the patient, be it, the discharge slip or the investigation findings or whatever it is, all of these must bear the same MLC number. Any patient which is being admitted or discharged with the advice of the doctor must also be mentioned in the case sheet. So only after all of this has been done, then only we can discharge any MLC case. So only if all of these things has been done, then only we can discharge the patient. However, if the patient has died, then we must make sure that we must hand over his or her body for post-mortem and not to the relatives. And we must also make sure that a copy of the MLC sheet must be handed over to the police in order for them to carry out the further investigations. So these are the things that you must keep in mind whenever you encounter a medical legal case. Now moving on to the next one, that is the transfer of MLC. So what are the things you need to keep in mind while you transfer any medical legal case? Before transferring the patient from one hospital to the other, you must make sure that the proper medical treatment has been given to the patient in order to reduce the risk of the patient. You must also make sure that the referring hospital must have the space for the patient as well as the qualified personnel in order to provide treatment to the patient. You must also make sure that they have agreed and they are ready to accept the patient in order to continue his or her treatment. Only after this has been confirmed, then only we can transfer the patient. While transferring the patient, you should also make sure that you send all the documents of the patient. It should include, all the treatment which has been provided, as well as all the investigations which has been performed for the patient. Here, all the lab reports must also be sent so that it will be easier for them to provide the further treatment. So while transferring the patient, you must also make sure that at least one qualified personnel will be accompanying the patient along with all the equipments while they are transferring the patient from one hospital to the other. So these are the various things that you must make sure before you transfer the client from one hospital to the other. Now the next one here is the admission and discharge. So being a nurse, what are the various things you must keep in mind before you admit the client as well as before you discharge this particular client? So here, whenever a medical legal case is being admitted or discharged from the hospital, you must make sure that you must communicate this information to the nearest police station before this is being done. So here, as I've said that, whenever you encounter any medical legal case, you must inform the law enforcing agencies whereby further investigation. It is also always better that all these medical legal cases must be informed from the casualty of the hospital itself. Why? Because this is a place where the medical legal register is being available and all the necessary entries are being made. So through this, we can get all the accurate information which is needed in order to carry out the further investigations. Now moving on to the next one. While discharging or while referring the client from one hospital to the other, care must be taken to see that he has received all the discharge cards, the referral letters, the treatment which has been provided in the hospital, the complete summary of the admission, as well as the instructions which he or she needs to follow after he has been discharged from the hospital. So before we discharge the patient or before we refer the patient, we must make sure that all these things needs to be done, because failure to do so renders the doctors liable for negligence or deficiency of services. If the patient is not in a serious condition, or if the patient feels that he or she can take care of him or her own self, and if he wants to leave the hospital setting without the advice of the doctors, then we must make sure that before he leaves the hospital, we must explain all the possible outcomes that he or she can encounter, and we must also make sure that we must make him or the family members signed on the consent form in order to serve as a proof in case anything happens to the patient after he or she has been discharged from the hospital. And the last step is that before you discharge the patient, you must make sure that you had informed the nearby police station. So here, these are the various things that you, being a nurse, must keep in mind. Now, if the patient has absconded, which means running away, or if the death of any of the medical legal case has occurred, then we as a nurse must make sure that we must inform the family members as well as the police immediately. We must also request for a medico-legal post-mortem examination providing a copy of the death summary, And the last one, that is, in case of the death of this medical legal case, we must make sure that we must not issue any death certificate until and unless the post-mortem for the particular patient has been performed. So these are the various things that we nurses must do if the patient has absconded or if any death of the medical legal cases has happened. So here we have come to the end of this topic, whereby in today's session I have discussed regarding the medical legal cases. We have also discussed about what are the various roles and responsibilities of a nurse during the admission and discharge, and we've also discussed what are the various roles and responsibilities that you as a nurse must perform if any medical legal case has absconded or if there is the death of that particular patient. So here, I hope you have got a clear insight of this topic. I'll be meeting you guys in another session whereby I will be dealing with the furthermore topics of this particular subject. So here we have come to the end of this topic. So in today's session, we have discussed about what a medical legal case is, what are the various roles and responsibilities of a nurse in documentation, admission and discharge, as well as the abscond or death of any of the medical legal case. So I hope you guys have got a clear insight of this topic. I'll be meeting you guys in another session whereby we will be dealing with the furthermore topics of this particular subject. So until then, have a great day. Thank you.